129, show number 129. And we are in interview week, as we know, because it's the 9 days in between Rosh Chodesh Av, the new moon of Av, and Tisha B'Av, the 9 days. We are not doing any music shows, but we're doing interview with great musicians. And we have no exception tonight. We have a great musician, a legendary keyboard player and musician joining us. He has been on Shlock Rock albums. We will talk about that. He has played Shlock Rock shows. We will talk about that. And, of course, he's got a life outside of Shlock Rock. Isn't that right, Brian?
That's hard to believe, but yeah, a small one. But, you know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the studio, the Four Corners Project studio here in Beit Shemesh, Israel, Brian Gelfand.
Thank you, Lenny. Thanks for having me.
All right.
This is exciting.
It's a pleasure. It is a pleasure to have you. And, you know, we have been, this show, Lenny Solomon Live, has been going since last June 22nd. Because of COVID, I had so much work, I had to find things to do with my time. And so
Lenny.
We reinvented to Lenny Solomon Live. And this is our 129th show. It's an unbelievable, it's our second year.
That's my new lucky number.
129, right?
I'm
129.
Yeah.
So, you know, what's always people, you know, lately people have been asking me, so is it picking up? Is it picking up? And I look at them, I'm going, do you see any concerts coming back at all? They go, no.
I don't know. Like that wall behind you should, you know, is not as full of flyers for concerts that I would like to see. But
yeah, well, you know what? The flyers are all in my mother's apartment in Kew Gardens. If I brought them back, we could definitely plaster. But we really do need a new set, come to think of it. And by the way, today, ladies and gentlemen, is the Florida Panthers night. Every night I wear a different hockey jersey.
I was wondering,
you know, just to make things interesting. This is the Florida Panthers night. We are in Florida. We are not really. We are in Beit Shemesh, Israel. But anyway,
enough.
Brian, we have a great show planned. We have to talk about you and your musical contribution to Jewish music, which, believe it or not, is something that is something that really you have made an impact on Jewish music. And people are going to say, well, what impact has he made? And that's what we're going to discuss today. Let's start with...
I can't wait to find out. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's why I've done my research. I've done my research.
Okay.
So let's talk about, first thing is your musical background and how you became a piano player, where you grew up and all that stuff.
All that stuff. You want, all right, all the nitty gritty. Well, I was born, I'm from Long Island. I'm a Long Island boy. I'm Plainview, Long Island. And pretty much the usual. I went to the Hebrew Academy in Nassau County.
Otherwise known as Hank. You went to Hank.
For those, you know. And I just gravitated to the piano as a kid.
When was your first lesson? How old were you?
I must have been around 6 or 7, something like that. I remember I wanted to start earlier. I remember it was like it was kind of a usual story. You know, I have 2 older sisters, and my sisters would play, and so we had a piano, and my grandmother had a piano, and I just kind of liked. I was into it, so I would just kind of gravitate towards it. Begged for lessons. I think my parents were a little reluctant. I think, you know, these days, you know, like, you know, people who are, you know, kids in the womb will start with piano lessons, you know, like parents are jumping right on it.
It's too early, right?
My parents.
I started when I was 8 years old. My first lesson, accordion, March 1969. I remember it. I remember March 1969, my father taking me and my brother to my accordion teacher for our first lesson. And we went for 10 years. We would go every Sunday.
You played accordion for 10 years?
Yeah, from 8 to 18.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. I just got an accordion. My neighbor gave me, it's sitting right back there. My neighbor gave me, and I've always wanted to play. So perhaps
great instrument.
When I see you, yeah, I remember in second grade, we had a rabbi who, as a treat, Rabbi Hush Hush, he would bring the accordion. And he would play.
Why was he called Rabbi Hush Hush?
That was his name, Hush Hush. I remember maybe that was like a stage name because they did fire him.
I never heard of such a thing.
Rabbi Hush Hush. Yeah. Anyway,
Oh my
but
gosh.
the one good thing about him was he did play the accordion, and I was kind of into that.
Well, I got to tell you something. If we get nothing out of this interview, Rabbi Hush Hush is a great story.
Yes, Rabbi Hush Hush. Yes.
So everybody was playing accordion in the late 60s. 69, me and all my friends took accordion lessons, and then it became a little bit of a joke of an instrument. And when I was 15, I started taking piano lessons, and I took classical piano for 3 years. So now when did you really play classical piano, didn't you?
I did, but a lot of people who know me now, think, oh, you must have started like classical. I mean, I did have classical lessons, but I wasn't really that into it. I actually had a very hard time reading the notes, reading off the page. And I've actually put in a lot of time since then, but it was late in the game when I actually became like a kind of a fluent reader. It was after grad school when I realized if I really wanted to do what I wanted to do, I had to get that down. But in high school or in elementary school, I became like an improviser. I kind of figured out, I was like, what are these letters above the, chords? And I kind of figured out, and I'd start playing by ear, and
so
my teachers would help me a little bit.
You and a fellow Long Islander, Billy Joel, have the same thing in common, because Billy Joel, when he was taking lessons, and during the week he was supposed to be practicing, and he would actually be improvising new classical music. And his mother thinks, oh, he's practicing the pieces.
He's practicing.
And then when the teacher would come for a lesson, couldn't play the pieces, right?
Right.
And so you and Billy Joel have that in common.
We have Long Island, right? He actually, later on, when I became a fan, I was very enthused to know he grew up just a couple miles, Hicksville, Long Island. He used to box. He used to do boxing matches, I found it, in the shopping mall that me and my friends would buy records in. So isn't
that unbelievable?
Passed each other in Mid Island Shopping Plaza. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
It's really something else. So okay, so you're a piano player, and when's the first time you joined the band?
I didn't join a band until college, really. I didn't, I was like I didn't have any music friends as kids. It's not like, I think kids today are more luckier. And I think actually, particularly in Jewish schools, there was nothing. I was the music program.
Right.
And Hank. I remember, we had Mr. Seymour Silbermans. Maybe you've heard of him. He was the teacher. I had him
too.
He was an institution. He would go around to all the schools and he would teach. And he taught me a few things. He was actually, it turns out he was a Juilliard. He was like a serious musician. I didn't really know that at the time. But you know what?
I'll tell you something that Seymour Silverman's had over all the other music teachers in schools that I learned from, which is that nobody made fun of Seymour Silverman's. When I was going to school, they gave him respect. On the other hand, when I was in MTA, oh my God, the things they did to those music teachers, it made me say I will never be a music teacher. I mean, it was so awful. They would throw things. Things.
I have to tell you, at Hank, they weren't. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but I remember I was the only one who wanted to go. I remember I was my first act of social disobedience. I needed speech lessons as a kid. And they scheduled them. They didn't want to take me out of, math or Gemara, whatever they were teaching me. And they would take me out of music. And I said, I'm not going. I refused. I put my foot down and said, I'm not leaving Mr. Silberman's. I'm not going. I'm not bailing on music class.
So he was great. He only passed away recently. I mean,
right,
I don't know.
Long ago.
Right. Not that long ago. I can't remember how much recently is. It could be 10 years.
Right. It could be
5 years.
But he was, if he was teaching us as kids, he was definitely up there in age.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was. And
we had great times with him. I had great times with him. I had great experience with him. Now, okay, so when did you join the band that you joined that I know you from?
That's the band. That's it. Mark Skyer, Kabballah.
When did you join them? What year?
Well, let's see. I graduated from Hank, I think in 84, perhaps, something like that. And then it was the next year when I went to Queens College for 1 year. And a lot of my friends from Hank, I remember they went to Stern and college, right? The women's college for YU. And I went and I visited them at whatever that Brookdale Hall or whatever dorm that was. And I was playing in the lobby and Mark Skyer happened to be visiting his sister at that same dorm. And he heard me playing in that lounge there. And that was it. That was my first time. I'd never been in a band. There was no one to be in a band with, when I was growing up.
Isn't that funny? it's really unbelievable. You know, I'll tell you what's also interesting is when I went to MTA, my senior year, I took music with Dr. Levy. Dr. Levy was the entire music department of YU, and it was one of
Right.
the reasons that I went to Queens College, because Queens College was the Aaron Copland School
School
of
of
Music,
Music. Great school.
and it was unbelievable. Oh, just what a great experience I had in Queens
Yeah.
College. But and I had a good year with Dr. Levy, but he was the entire faculty for the
Right. Yeah.
music
They had
department.
Bartholomew too, or whatever, but he was, yeah, he was pretty much it. I know we have a guitarist friend in common who told me about him. So yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, a
So
guitarist friend in common. Right.
yes.
That's right.
Huh.
We can mention him. Moshe
Mo
Piro
Shapiro.
took Dr. Levy for so so wait a minute. So which college did you go to?
I only went to Queens College for a year. And then I transferred. I transferred to Columbia and JTS. I went to a joint program with Columbia University and the Jewish Theological Seminary. So
And
I
did you
got,
go for music at Columbia?
yes, I did. I went for music at Columbia.
And how was that? How what was that?
I have to tell you, it was fine. It was very academic. I would have had a better musical experience if I stayed at Queens College by
You
far.
would have. I had the greatest
Yeah.
time. I 8 semesters in Queens College chorus with Dr. Robert White as the choir director. I mean, I actually called him up when he was 85 years old. It was just a couple of years ago, and I thanked him. I said it was the greatest 8 semesters I ever spent doing chorus, being in chorus there, and learning theory and sight singing, and
Right.
then conducting. I mean, I just didn't major in it. I majored in accounting.
Right.
You
So I
know?
did the same thing. It was the same thing. I had this, I wasn't in chorus, but but when I was at Queens College, I was in the Glee Club, which was like the mini chorus or something with Rosenblum or something like that. He was great. He's still around. I see him conducting.
Lawrence. Was his first name Lawrence? Rosenberg, wasn't it Rosen? I don't remember. Anyway, so you're now joining Kabballah. Now Kabballah
Yes.
had put out their first album,
Yes.
and they parted ways with their keyboard player, and you became their
Correct.
keyboard player.
Yes. and
Now
I became
on
the keyboard
Kabbalah
player.
2, the reason I've been looking
Kabbalah
to my left
Classic.
is because I actually did prep work, and I got Kabbalah 1
this.
and Kabbalah 2 to show the camera. And I got to see if I can find it. I think I see it. 1 minute. I go off camera.
Those were good records.
I got it. Unbelievable. So here it is. This is Kabbalah 1.
Yes.
Get the camera.
And they had, they had just finished that.
When you joined the band.
When I joined, they hadn't even really, performed, sold any, or, I think it had just come out and
I was an investor in Kabbalah 1,
and that at the time, making a record was a expensive,
It really
venture.
was. Here's Kabbalah 2, Kabbalah Classic it's called.
Kabbalah Classic. I remember that car is from a ad.
Yes.
So that Mark Skyer cut out of a magazine.
And you
And,
have a song that you wrote, Yachad. You
Yes.
wrote a song on it called Yachad. Now, I
Yes.
want to ask you about that song. It's a fantastic song, one of my favorite songs on that album.
Oh, thank you.
But it's you realize that Yachad is from Nusach Svard. It's not Ashkenaz.
Yes.
So how did you pick?
How did I pick those lyrics? I have to tell you, I still remember. I was like, first of all, that's the first song I wrote. I was basically on assignment. I wasn't really a songwriter. I have to tell you, I owe Mark Skyer a lot, right? Because I'd
he
never been
pushed
in a
you.
band. Yeah, I'd never been in a band, and he put me in a band, right? I'd played around a little bit. I'd never really written songs, but I knew I wanted to get into the songwriting thing. So I cranked out that song for that. That was the first thing I ever really wrote. I remember how I picked those words. I had a Shlomo Carlebach book sitting in front of me on the piano.
Oh, and he has Yachad.
Yeah, he had, he had words. He used that text. And I was like, instead of looking in a sitter, I basically just flipped through the book, and he had all kinds of psukim that were, he had set to music. And I was like, okay, this one's fine. And I just used that.
It's such a great song. And I wish I could, if I was tech savvy, what I would do right now is play it. on, but I'm not tech savvy, and it's too much for me. Just finding the cassettes was working.
Don't push yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, all listeners, do you know that this is a cassette? Does anybody know what these are used for?
By the way, that the cassette is really inside that little box. That's not really even the cassette.
That's correct. Let's take it out to show. It's like show and tell, Mr. Rogers.
That's an actual tape deck back there, right there.
Ooh,
that
yes, I see
would go into that. Yes.
Yeah. It's funny because now we used to do it with beta 8 tracks. My friend used to have a car, and we would drive around.
8-track, yeah, 8-track cassettes.
Billy Joel, The Stranger, on beta track, and it was really funny. Anyway, okay. So,
and on that song, Gershon Veroba sings. He did the background vocals with me. I mean, he arranged them and everything, and we sang it.
That's a great. It's one of my favorite songs.
Well, I appreciate it. I remember that, I remember trying to, basically. So that was yet another thing that Mark Skyer pushed me into. He taught me how to play in a band.
He was definitely a pioneer, and I'll tell you why. Because what he was doing with Kabbalah, nobody did that stuff.
That's true. I think. Well, he's a real stylist. He took what he really likes, and he really kind of studied what he liked, and was able to kind of write songs that had very identifiable structures, like that you could say, oh, I know who. Like he could write like a Beatles-esque song, and you'd be like, yeah, the Beatles could have written that.
So Judy Hertzfeld, our associate producer from Clifton, New Jersey, she
hello,
writes
Judy
in,
Hertzfeld.
Yeah, she says, did you mention Kabbalah? This was one of my favorite Jewish tapes. A real fave of mine. It's hard for me to read back here. I got to get one of those big screens but then again, that would be tech. There's a limit. Okay, so it's very, very interesting. Now, you played with Kabbalah, and then you played with Shlock Rock.
I did. Well, I think I met you through them. I think
you had to have.
And I remember I remember
Simcha Kagan. You were in Kabbalah. Simcha Kagan's on drums. Mark's on bass. You're on keys.
Yes, and we had Izzy Botnick, who was a great young guitar player.
Right.
The name of the guest, Judy, is Brian Gelfand.
Right.
Hi, Judy.
We have Brian Gelfand, keyboard extraordinaire. Who has played on numerous Shlock Rock albums, as well as Shlock Rock concerts. And he's also played with us in Israel. He's also played with us do you remember when you played with us in Israel?
I think so. I don't remember.
Okay, let me tell you who's in the band. Shmuel Wasserman, Oliver Shalom, was on drums.
I can't believe he's gone.
Avrami Weisberger was on second piano. Jonathan Rimberg was on guitar or on first piano, and I was playing keyboard. And then you were in the audience. It was at the Ramada Renaissance, 1991. The Ramada Renaissance in the summer, right after Tisha B'Av, and you came up and did a guest set with us, get a couple of guest songs.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
No recollection, huh?
It's gone.
That means you've done a lot of. Means you've done a lot of shows in your life.
Yeah.
Now we have some great Shlock Rock memories, but let's first start. The first appearance of Brian Gelfand on a Shlock Rock album was Shirei Boker, when you did the solo for Biado. You remember Biado?
Oh yes, I remember that. That was a Squeeze homage.
It was a Squeeze. It was a Squeeze song
for Another Nail in My Heart. Yeah.
Right.
Interestingly, I just did I think I mentioned to you, I did a songwriting class online with Chris Difford, who is the lyricist from Squeeze.
And which is unbelievable to me. Did you actually get a chance to talk to him?
Oh yeah. We were Zooming. It was basically me, him, and 10 other faces in little boxes on the screen. And he'd be like, hello, Brian, good morning. How are you? And he was sitting in his home in England, and he was, whatever 6-hour time difference or whatever it is. And he, listened to my songs, and it was great. It was really very cool. He's a nice guy,
everybody
too.
by their piano or by the guitar, and they would play and sing? Is that what would happen?
he gave us a lot of like our own assignments. Like we didn't really sit there and play. Well, some people did. I did a little bit, but for a lot of the assignments, basically, he's like, okay, here's your assignment, write a song, and then we're coming back in 5 hours. And because he did it that way, I did a little demo in my little home studio here. So often I would
people would give to have a writing clinic with one of the Squeeze writers. Ladies and
That's why I
gentlemen,
did
for you that don't know, Squeeze is my favorite band of the 1980s, the English band, my favorite band.
Yeah, they're great, really great.
They're
They're still going, cranking out good music.
Now, believe it or not, we're already 20 minutes into this interview, and I
God.
haven't done no paperwork. So let me just do a little bit of paperwork. Number one is if you're watching from Facebook, make sure to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. If you're watching from YouTube, the Shlock Rock channel or the Four Corners Project channel, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell so that you get notified every time we have a new whatever, and also leave a good comment. We've been getting some great comments lately. LinkedIn, if you're watching from LinkedIn, make sure to send me a comment. We've been getting a lot of LinkedIn people lately, and also Twitter, if you're watching at Lenny Solomon. So we're going to 8 channels, Brian. This is unbelievable. We actually average around 1,000 views a night. Now, it doesn't start off that way. It starts off with around 15 or 20 while we're going live, at least that I can see. But then by the time the morning comes around, we're at 300, and then after a week, we're close to 1,000 views.
Yona Lloyd is here.
Oh, my gosh.
Yona Lloyd, I remember. Now, Yona Lloyd, I think he was one of my connections to you because I remember him coming to my apartment. This was like my first Shlock Rock thing in Queens so I was still in Queens College, and kind of like helping me prepare for, I started getting into the NCSY racket through Kabballah and through Shlock Rock, all of that. So
it's
unbelievable. Hi, Yona. Thanks.
So Yona says Brian is the best, and Steve Ettinger. Steve Ettinger says, hi, Yona.
Hi, Yona. There you go.
Yeah. Steve, it's good to see you. It's good to see you here on Lenny Solomon Live. So it's really, and one more thing, and then we'll get back to our interview. I just want to tell everybody, make sure you go to the fourcornersproject.org, leave a donation for the year. Make a donation for the year so that we can continue our work. 120 shows a year. I'm not sure we're going back on the road, Brian. I think that I like this better. I'm from my house. I don't have to go anywhere.
That's right. Yeah, packing is a lot easier.
But to tell everybody, tomorrow night, Thursday night, 10 p.m. Israel time, 3 p.m. East Coast, we have Jonathan Rimberg coming into the studio for an interview.
He's an institution.
Then he's unbelievable. And then next Monday night, we're back to live music after Tisha B'Av. Monday night, another show number 131, musical. It'll be a extravaganza, as they say, an extravaganza. All right. Amazing. So, Brian, I want to know if you remember this scene. We're in Connecticut. The band is in Connecticut. I'm pretty sure Mo Shapiro's on the bandstand.
I already know what this scene is.
And our drummer, Roy Weinberger, gets stuck in traffic. And when I say stuck in traffic, he was stuck in traffic.
Yes.
And he never made it to the gig until the second half of the gig. And there was one person that played drums. You played drums from your keyboard. Do you remember that show?
I do remember. It was very lucky, I guess, because, you didn't always have 2 keyboard players on your show. And I remember this one you had me on, which I was very grateful for. And I ended up, instead of playing keyboard, I played drums, the drum sounds on the keyboard, which I do a lot because I do a lot of studio production and whatever. So I program drums. So I was kind of used to that. And that was totally fun. I remember that. And I remember it was crazy because we were delaying going on, waiting for Roy. And I said, okay, I can do, and then we were just going to go on because, you had hundreds of people sitting there. Yeah. And I started playing the drums. And then you really got into it. And then I remember halfway through the show, you go like, I still remember this. You go, drum solo. And I'm like, oh man, like we're getting by here. Don't push your luck, Lenny.
And I gave you a drum solo.
Gave you a drum solo. It was very funny. It was on Rhythm of the Night, I think. And I was like, oh God.
That's a crazy story. That's only I could do something as crazy.
It was funny.
Because, ladies and it's Brian was playing drums on his keyboard. You have to
Right,
picture it. Our drummer, he finally showed up. He got stuck in traffic, and then he said, "Lenny, should I set up?" I said,
Yeah.
"No, we got it covered."
Right. It was like basically like I was just doing this on like I
Right.
knew what each of the keys, this is a snare drum and there's a kick drum, and I played. It was I totally loved it. I do that occasionally on like.
And it was in Connecticut. I can't remember the community. It could have been Westport. It could have been Westport, Connecticut.
But yes,
you want to show them? You have a drum sample that you could show them?
I don't right now. Honestly.
Okay, so forget that. So, all right. So first thing is you played. Yeah. So you played on the Shirei Boker album, the solo of Biado, which is a squeeze takeoff of Another Nail in My Heart, right?
Yes.
And then the next time you played with us, I believe, was in Mikdash, where you played the piano accompaniment for Asay Licharav.
Oh, that was a beautiful song. Yeah, I remember that.
It was a beautiful song, and you played it amazingly, and we had no other instruments. It was just you and me.
It was Mick Cantarella's studio. I remember that.
Yes.
In Brooklyn. And it was great. And you did all these beautiful vocals on it. I remember it was really nice.
Yeah, it was a great thing. And then I'm trying to remember if you appeared on any other albums. We did some production work together.
Yes.
Where I
was on the cover of Sergeant Schlocker's.
That's right. You were on the cover of
I was holding an accordion.
Magical History Tour, and you were playing accordion.
I mean, I was holding an accordion. I was
holding. Well, that was my accordion. That would have been 1991.
Yeah.
That would have been 1991. So now, I could probably look at the back and tell me, when did the Brian Gelfand solo album come out?
Well, so when I was in college at JTS, I started my own bands called Bot Coal, right? With a bunch of guys, and it was heavily inspired by Mark Skyer, because he basically taught me how to, put a band together. So I had a band, and I was like the main songwriter and vocalist and keyboard player, and I had a bunch of guys, and this guy David Levine was a drummer, and Ross Singer was a guitar player, and we got a bass player, David Park, and we put out a record during college, and I did that, and then I went to grad school. I went to New England Conservatory. And when I went to New England Conservatory, I got a couple commissions from some like Camp Vermont to write all these songs, and I did another album kind of on my own. And I took from both of those things and redid some of the songs that I'd done, and I stuck it on that cassette that you just hold up. That's like a compilation of kind of my own, spanning over 7 or 8 years.
So we're going to focus. It's amazing. We're going to focus on the last two things because we're already 28 minutes in.
We're almost done. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. Well, we'll go a little bit longer if you have time. But
I got time.
Let's talk about two things. One is you became a choral director.
Yes.
And you've been at a lot of schools. You've been at Flatbush, Yeshiva Flatbush.
Yes,
right?
I was there for 12 years. Yeah.
Right. So tell the audience what you've done musically, especially with chorus and with choral music.
I started Frisch, actually. That was one of my first choral jobs. And I started becoming interested in vocal arranging. So they wanted a choir director at Frisch. And that combined with, there's this great guy, Daniel Henkin. You know Daniel Henkin?
Yeah, he's brilliant.
He's great. Brilliant. So he is, I'd have to say Mark Skyer and Dan Henkin, I owe a lot of my career to those two gentlemen, right? Because they both, I like the change of.
You like that camera switch?
I like that. And it's like now we're moving to Dan Henkin.
Very tech.
Very nice. So Dan Henkin, actually, he pushed me in a different direction. He asked me to engineer and do all the backing tracks for some of his choral albums. at Solomon Schechter. So I started doing that. So I started like doing like recording, and the recording thing I got into because Mark Skyer had pushed me into like recording, doing the arrangements from Rabbi Mikhail Torsky. I did it, which was kind of crazy, but like, so anyway, but through that I was like, oh, I like the being involved with choirs and stuff. I started doing some arranging, and then Daniel Henkin, when he left Flatbush to go exclusively to Ramaz, he said, are you interested in this job? So I took it, and I started arranging, for choirs pretty much when I got there.
And it's amazing, isn't it? Amazing thing to do. It's something that I would love to do. I would love to do it. I've never done it. I mean, I've done it in the studio, obviously.
Right.
When, okay, you sing this part, you sing this part.
Right.
But there was nothing like Queens College when we were 120 voices, and you had Dr. Robert White go bass, tenor, alto, soprano, and then everybody he would just take us through our warm-ups, and then into and we did recitals with him. I did Beethoven's Ninth with him with a full orchestra first semester. But so you've been involved in that. Are you teaching anywhere now?
Currently I am at the Kinneret Day School in Riverdale. So I do a choir there. But they're young. They're like, it's elementary school.
Right. Different game.
It's a different thing. Right. So I have to say, like, I loved my time at Flatbush. I left because the commute was just, I live now in Westchester, and it was
too hard to get to Brooklyn.
It was too hard to get there. But I do miss conducting a high school chorus and arranging for a high school chorus. It was great.
Wow.
Really great. So.
And did you end up getting your master's in music, by the way?
Yes, I did. I got a master's.
Where did you get it
from the New England Conservatory in Boston, Massachusetts.
So wait, what happened to Juilliard? Juilliard never happened, or?
I never went to Juilliard. I took some piano lessons there.
My father wanted me to go to Juilliard, and I went to Queens College. But you went from Queens College to Columbia, and then you went to the New England Conservatory, and you got your master's there.
Yes.
Was that amazing? Or was it fun?
It was amazing. It was like I have to say, I was like it was hard because I was very behind when I got there, because a lot of the people that I was in a master's program with, like I went to Columbia, as I said, and I was doing it was an academic thing, and I was taking classical piano lessons kind of on the side. But a lot of these people had been, in a master's program. They went to a conservatory undergrad. They've been like hitting it hard for a long time.
If we use the yeshiva comparison, they were in yeshiva, then they went to Beis Medrash, then they went to Kollel. You had to jump to the musical Kollel.
I jumped to the Kollel,
but or Beis Medrash.
Correct.
Right?
So I always felt like, and it's weird. It's like you go to masters. Masters was only 2 years. It's like nothing. It flies by. It's 4 semesters. It's nothing. So it taught me a lot about like, what I'd like to learn. So I gathered a lot of stuff, and I think because of that kind of what I always regard as a late start, I still take lessons. I have 2 teachers. I have a jazz teacher and I have a classical piano teacher. So I'm 52. I'm still studying.
You look 26.
Oh, well, that's kind, but I'm not.
I look 26.
You do.
That's because of the hockey jersey. The hockey jersey makes you look young. That's the secret of a hockey jersey.
As soon as we get off, I'm ordering a hockey jersey.
Now listen, Brian. For our last, what I want to talk about last is, I know that you've written musicals, or. Well, you kind of have. You had told me you were, or maybe you were in the middle of writing it. I
wrote a couple like musical. I'm mostly a songwriter. I've written music for other people's shows, incidental music, some isolated songs, stuff like that. So,
right. What is it that if I would say to you, I know that you play now club. You obviously do club dates with sometimes with Jonathan Rimberg, with Nafshane, who writes sometimes with
Yitzi Spinner.
Okay, that's nice.
So Ellie Katz, certainly.
Oh, very good. So what if I would say to you, Brian, pick what is it? Where do you want to go from here musically? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 7 years? What would you say?
That's an interesting question, which I think about a lot. I'm pulled in so many different directions because I study all these different things. Like, I don't want to be a classical recitalist, even though I do play a lot of classical music. I don't really picture myself as like a jazzer, like playing jazz clubs, even though I study a lot of jazz. But I would like to. I love doing all of that. I definitely want that part of my life. And I would say where I'd like to be in the next couple of years is doing more of my own original music and kind of incorporating a lot of
I agree.
that stuff into it.
I agree.
So
Totally.
I've been doing that actually over the pandemic. It's actually been that's been one of the few bright sides of the pandemic is it's pushed me to do more of that. So
it's a funny thing because people are still sending me parody ideas, and I don't know how to break it to them, but I'm like way past there right now. I don't want to do parodies anymore.
Right.
But it's just the way it is. Once you're stereotyped, you're stereotyped. Luckily, you have not been stereotyped. You have the future ahead of you. And maybe we'll both get to do. Well, first thing is for me, Daniel in Babylon is a key. I got to get Daniel in Babylon out there.
Yeah, definitely.
And it just besides the fact that Broadway and theater has been closed for the last year and a half, and I don't think it's opening up so soon, even though they say it'll be open by this September. I
don't know. I know people who are playing on Broadway, and they say they're scheduled to go back. So
maybe it'll happen.
We'll see.
Depends if they lock us down with another variant, but
that's possible. Yeah. Before we end, I do want to thank you because you have always been very gracious to me. And I've been very grateful to you. As I always try to I am very grateful to, as I mentioned, Mark Skyer and Hank, and Seymour Silbermans and Gershon Varoba and all these people who I really, really, really helped me do what I love. And I'm very grateful to you and them.
Thank you. All I could say is that it's been a pleasure, and we had such great times together, and hopefully we'll have more times together. Yes.
Yeah, totally.
And maybe even one day we'll get Mo Shapiro to come on for a half hour.
From your mouth.
I'm hoping. But in the meantime, we did get to talk about him a little bit. And
we did.
He was part of Shlock Rock 2.0, as you were. You were part of Shlock Rock 2.0.
Yes.
And
I remember, it was a Kesher. I was into Kesher.
Yes.
I remember
Kesher was amazing.
They were great.
Band.
And the songs were great. The songs were really great.
Were you on the YU in '85 when Kabballah played YU? Kesher was the second band, and Miami Boys was the third band. Had you joined the band yet by that time? It was like December '85.
I don't know. I'm not sure if it may have been very close, because that's
right.
Kind of right around
sometime in '86. I would think.
Yeah, I think that was right around where I met them. So
yeah.
Anyway,
I want to thank Brian Gelfand for coming on. Lenny Solomon Live, show number 129. And Steve Ettinger, I want to thank you for commenting. Judy Hertzfeld, our associate producer, Yona Lloyd. And I want to tell Steve, I will write notes to all the things that you said to ask Jonathan Rimberg tomorrow. And believe me, Judea was one of those things. So you don't have to worry about that. Judea was one of my favorite albums. It was one of the things that inspired me to move forward.
That's a great album. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, can't wait to hear about that one. Yeah.
So anyway, tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Israel time, 3 p.m. New York time, we have Jonathan Rimberg in studio. Brian Gelfand, I want to thank you for coming on Lenny Solomon Live. Everybody out there, have a great night, and we will see you tomorrow with show number 130. Keep on schlocking, and have a great day.
Keep